Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Talk of the Town podcast. If you have not already, make sure to hit that subscribe button as we're now on the road to 500 subscribers here on the YouTube channel. If you love sports content, sports talk, anything from sports betting to updated rankings every week, it's all right here on the Talk of the Town podcast. And here today, we're going to be reacting to some of Week 15's best games, but I hope you guys had a great weekend. You know, I sure as hell did. I had my 22nd birthday on Friday. Went out, did some things for that. And also had a good week of watching football as well. So I will say on the other side of it, part that wasn't so good about the weekend is where I live at. Lots of snow, kind of just shitty weather. I think it reached a max of like 12 degrees where I live at. And, you know, people who do know me know that I wear shorts year round. And if you didn't know me, now you know. No matter the weather, it could be negative 3 degrees. I wear shorts outside. That's my whole wardrobe. So that weather isn't necessarily my friend. I get that from my dad. Kind of drives my family nuts. But nonetheless, that weather's not my friend. And I just hope you guys had a great weekend in general. But in terms of the football side of things, some good games, some controversial calls per usual anymore, controversial games, which kind of leads me into my first talking point of the video. Last night on my Instagram, I posted, if you guys have any thoughts or questions from Week 15, Week 15's games to, make sure to let me know. I'll talk about it on the show today. And I did get a couple. And the first one I had was the referees have been incredibly terrible this year. Today's performance was the worst I've seen this year. It's a time we move on to robot referees over a human officiating. Look, I watch all the games every single weekend. I watch every game. And, some of the games that really don't matter kind of put up in the top left. And obviously the bigger games, I make it on the bigger side of the screen. But look, a lot of games and some really bad calls yesterday. We can even link it back over a couple of weeks ago with the Steelers and Ravens game with the Isaiah Likely call. They ended up taking back the touchdown. And, I always say this for anything. Humans are always prone to mistakes. I always give people the benefit of the doubt with certain things. Now, obviously, some things are more consequential than others. Like if you go and murder somebody, I'm not going to sit there and be like, dude, I'm going to give you another chance, or be like, well, there's a reason he did this. Like, no. Obviously there's more consequential actions than others. But, if you're a grocery store clerk and you put the russet potatoes where the lemons are supposed to be, I'm not going to sit there and say, let's throw this guy on the street. He doesn't deserve to have a job. Like, we're all prone to mistakes. But, refereeing definitely has its consequences. And especially now, I feel like there's less room for error than others. And like that Rams and Lions game yesterday, I think it was Parkinson who caught the touchdown. I was like a 20, 30-yard touchdown or something like that. I forget the exact distance of it. But he was clearly a yard or two short. Brady and I think it was Burkhardt were announcing the game yesterday. And even they said, oh, this is definitely coming back. Everyone, me, you, someone who is half blind could have seen that from a mile away, that was not a touchdown. Now, the implications of the game, the Lions defense, not even just yesterday, but all season, hasn't really been able to stop a nosebleed, more or less the Rams offense, especially at the 1 or 2 yard line, but anything can happen. I mean, it ended up being a one possession game, which I'll talk about here in a few, but, anything. Kyron Williams is a pretty fumble prone running back. He fumbles the ball a decent bit. And you talk about Aiden Hutchinson, you have pretty good defensive linemen. Like, those guys could have potentially forced a fumble. Stafford could have thrown an interception. Anything could have happened. The most likely scenario is they probably punch the ball in and score, or maybe they kick a field goal. You never know. Completely changes the entire implication of the game. But they ended up calling it a touchdown after they reviewed it, and they ended up getting, what's his name? Dan Blandino, the referee expert. And even he said, this is ridiculous. I don't see how you go back, you overview it, and you keep it a touchdown. And, I mean, even Rams fans, they're even sitting there saying, look, I don't know how the hell that was a touchdown, but we'll take it. And it's like, anymore, when they can go in a booth and take however long they want, which I'll tell you, and we all think the same thing, they sure as hell take their time. I mean, we're watching like 10 minutes of commercials while these guys are too busy making the wrong call most of the time, it seems like. And it's just like, how do you have access to every angle? You can slow-mo it, you can put it, fast forward it, you have like a million angles to look at it with. You have multiple people in your ear announcing it from New York, ref experts talking about, what they think it is. It's like, to me, it's pretty clear what is a touchdown and what isn't a touchdown and what should be turned over and what shouldn't be turned over. Again, their rule is if it's blatantly obvious, then you turn the call over. But if there's not enough evidence, you don't turn it over. And there's multiple instances every week to where it's just like, how do these guys have jobs? And that kind of gets into my point of like, I don't think Roger Goodell in the league is putting enough pressure on these guys. They can sit there and say they are, whatever they're doing, but they're not. Because week in and week out, it's the same crew announcing, they can make the worst call of the year the week prior. Like probably the Ravens-Steelers game where they took back the Isaiah Likely touchdown, where they literally apologized for it. And it's like, if they were apologizing to me as the coach, I'd just say, just shove it, bro. Honestly, I'd rather just not even hear it at that point because it means nothing. It's almost like an insult hearing an apology. I'd rather just be like, hey, you guys are sticking by your call at this point because I don't even want to hear you guys were wrong. Completely changes your whole landscape of the season at that point. And he's not putting enough pressure on these guys because I don't know what game that crew announced from the Ravens and Steelers game, but I'm sure whatever it is, those guys go and announce another really important game the next week. They do. And every once in a while you'll hear, they get moved off of prime time to go announce Titans and Browns or whatever it is, or I guess necessarily a less consequential game. But nonetheless, those guys are refereeing a game. And it's like, it almost kind of reminds me of like a teacher. Like teachers, the only way they get fired is by doing something that is egregious. Like, I'm talking like assaulting a student or something. But even then, most of the time they don't even get fired. They just move to a different district. Like, every school has multiple bad teachers, but those teachers will stay in that school forever and ever and ever as long as they want to. And when they move, they get offered a job from another school. So it's like they can sit there and be a terrible teacher, parents constantly bitching to the principal, sending them emails, counselors, whatever it is, and it doesn't matter. Like, they will keep their job. That's what it kind of reminds me of referees. It's like they can be bad. They can put up poor performances. No one likes them. Constant complaints. They'll be announcing the Lions and Rams game or a game with serious implications the next week. It doesn't matter. So, I do give it sometimes the benefit of the doubt. Humans in any profession or anything, obviously, unless it has serious consequences to it. But, refs anymore, when they have, assistants in their ear from guys who are watching it, they can fast forward it, they can slow-mo it, they can look at it from like 100 different angles. There's not a lot of room for excuse. There's not a lot of room for error there. And that's where I think, like, if it's constant and it's changing multiple teams season every year, I'm going to say you kind of got to move to AI at some point. At least make them more. I know they kind of did it with the change and overviewing the play and stuff like that in terms of the guys, the chain movers. They kind of replaced them with the AI and the ball spotting and stuff like that. But as it goes on, I think you've got to make AI and some sort of robot assistance way more prevalent because I watched a lot of those games yesterday, Bills-Patriots and stuff like that. And it was kind of brutal, to be honest with you. It really was. Broncos, Packers, 34-26. Look, the Broncos both these teams in a big spot yesterday. I mean, with the Patriots losing, Broncos fans were eyeing that game all day. And, at first it looked like, hell, Patriots kind of curb stomping the Bills. It's like, are they going to run away with this thing? And then you look up and Broncos fans are cheering. Bills end up coming back and winning that game. Again, we'll talk about that here in a few. But, Broncos are just getting business done. They're handling it. And I was very high on the Packers last week. I even made a short about them saying, hey, I'm all in on the Packers. Like, I kind of look, seems like they found their identity on offense. And I thought the Packers did play a good game yesterday. The Broncos defense, like, them and the Houston Texans are kind of like 1A, 1B, the best defense in the league. I think Houston is just, a tad better than Denver, but nonetheless, Denver has an elite defense and an elite offensive line. And I thought Bo Nix yesterday had his best game as a pro. I mean, you're in a massive spot. You have a chance now to take the number one seed in the AFC, which you're in that position. It's not like them and New England both played at 1 o'clock and it's like, hey, we're just kind of hoping New England wins. Like, no, they knew they were in that spot. They started that game after New England lost. So they knew it's like, hey, it's kind of do or die here. Like, we can win this game and really take a step up as a number one seed against a really tough team. It's not like they're going out there and playing against the Jets or the Titans. Like, they're going out there playing against a real team. And, they're trying to stay within the number one seed of their own, the Green Bay Packers, and they had some pretty devastating injuries yesterday. Micah Parsons now with an ACL tear. I mean, that's brutal. I don't care who you are. That's a terrible loss, the entirety of the season. Patrick Mahomes also tore his ACL yesterday, so some really bad injuries around the league yesterday. So Packers losing some guys all over the field, kind of just getting banged up, and they were still in that game nonetheless. But the Broncos, the main concern with them all season has been their offense. And you kind of look up as like, if their offense can play like that, Denver's going to be in the Super Bowl. The way their defense is played, Patrick Surtain kind of went down yesterday, which I was like, that's the last thing this team needs is for Pat Surtain to go down, especially with how targeted Riley Moss is, which is kind of due to Pat Surtain on the other side of the ball. Like, yeah, we're not targeting him, so we'll target Riley Moss. But now with Moss guarding probably your number one corner, your number one receiver, is like, that's kind of devastating for Denver's defense. But he ended up coming back and made a massive difference. I mean, he is probably the biggest game changer in that defense for Denver. So, but it's been all year. It's like, if the Denver offense can kind of sustain some sort of consistency, it's like this team is going to be the best team in the AFC, and I think we'll see them in Santa Clara in February. And if Bo Nix can keep playing like he did yesterday against what's been a really good Packers secondary and just a really good Packers defense in general, that team's going to be borderline unbeatable. Whether it's Buffalo, whether it's New England, whether it's Pittsburgh or Baltimore, whoever gets in, LA, whoever, Denver's going to be the team to beat. Bo Nix with a career game yesterday. And, kind of leading me in to the next question someone had for me here, which is, Broncos should win the AFC if Sean Payton is smarter on fourth down. And, that's true to an extent. Like, there was some really questionable fourth down calls all year from Sean Payton. And I think what's arguably been more questionable than Sean Payton's fourth down play calling has been his play calling in the red zone. Like, the Broncos have not been a very good red zone team on offense at all, which has led to their struggles on offense. And has led to the question of like, hey, are the Broncos really serious? Because their offense just isn't great, especially in the red zone. They really struggle to score touchdowns and keep sustained drives. And yesterday when I watched, like, if they can keep that game plan alive, which obviously they have to change their game plan week in, week out, this team will be fine. But, I do like that question as like, is Sean Payton's play calling on fourth down, that is a massive part, because in the playoffs, especially when things are toe-to-toe, like, you're not going to be able to go in and beat a team 42-7 in the playoffs. You're just not. And you look up and you can take out your starters by the third quarter if you wanted to. Like, the thing's just over. You're not going to be able to do that. So it's like fourth down play calls and deciding when to do so. With Sean Payton as a risky coach, that can come back to really bite you in the ass. They have a really good defense, which I think has bailed them out for a majority of the year, because if this team had a 16th ranked defense, just middle of the pack, Broncos would probably have like 4 less wins, because some of it, which doesn't get a lot of press because they win a lot of games regardless because their defense is so good. His fourth down play calling has been extremely risky, which kind of scares me coming into the playoffs. Like, if you don't convert those against Buffalo, against teams with really good offenses that are scoring on you, and your defense clearly doesn't have an answer for it, you're kind of screwed, because I don't necessarily know if I trust Denver being down 2 touchdowns, 14, 17 points, being able to come back. Like, I think Denver has to play within a tight time frame, or a tight score, should I say. They can be down, but they can only be down like maybe 7-10 points. I know they had that crazy comeback against the New York Giants earlier in the year, but you're not playing the New York Giants come January. You're just not. When you're down 17 points to Buffalo, that's going to be kind of hard, even though their defense isn't great. But I just think really the main issue, or the main cause for concern I have for Denver's offense, is like Sean Payton's play calling on fourth down, like you mentioned, and his red zone play calling when they're within 10 yards is like kind of very questionable. But yesterday was, I would say, in terms of the spot they were in, things on the line for him, I'd say yesterday was the best game of Bo Nix's career so far, for sure. He looked fantastic yesterday. It was just kind of eating that defense alive, and they can sustain that. This team will be incredibly dangerous heading into January. Bills-Patriots 35-31. As a Patriots fan, that game absolutely broke my heart, but nonetheless, the main thing with that game that people are mentioning is the referee calls. And I had the whole thing about the referees a few minutes ago. But nonetheless, whether or not you think a couple of calls went Buffalo's way, which as a Pats fan, nonetheless, when I talk on here, I don't talk biased. I promise. I'm not biased. I'm none of that. But the Marcus Jones interception, which they ended up calling a defensive pass interference, and then they actually ended up calling it a catch for Buffalo anyway, which made it like 100 times worse. So that, again, questionable, but every game has its questionable calls. I've seen Mike Vrabel go up on the podium and say, a team that has the most offensive holding calls that only had one yesterday, they had the most in the league, he's like, I don't know. I mean, Patriots, I do believe, kind of did get screwed by calls yesterday, but I could go through every single team in the league. Hell, Denver did yesterday. Riley Moss had played a great, I forget who it was. It may have been Dobbs, it may have been Jaden Reed, but I was on the sideline, made a great defensive play on him. And they ended up calling defensive pass interference. What the hell was that? That could have ended up costing Denver the game. But nonetheless, Denver ended up making stops. And Denver ended up making big plays on offense. And the Patriots were up at one point 24-7. And it was like, when they were up 21-0, I was like, is New England going to run away with this thing like 45-14 and this is over? And just be able to take the division by the third quarter. Nonetheless, even though the calls, didn't necessarily go their way, they couldn't get a stop anyway. I even think if they didn't get some of those calls, it would have still led to a touchdown. Now, I think it was Carlton Davis on one of them. Again, Josh Allen calls for a flag. It was like 10 seconds afterwards, and they end up doing it. That's what drives me crazy with any team. I don't care whether I'm watching New England play, whether I'm watching Jacksonville play, Buffalo. It doesn't matter. I don't care if Drake May was doing it to Buffalo yesterday, to where, 10 seconds after the play's over, they're walking to the sideline, all of a sudden a flag comes out. It's like, why? Why? To me, that's what I can't stand about referees, and why I do think, there should be a limit on flags in terms of after a play is done. Like, if it's not called within 5 seconds, you can't throw a flag anymore. Like that's that. Unless they challenge it, you can't throw a flag. Plays like 10 seconds and it's over. Like, punt team's coming out, all of a sudden they throw a flag and everyone's looking around. It's like, bro, it was a third down, ended up leading to a Buffalo touchdown. It was just kind of crazy. But Josh Allen, if, let's just say a team had to start from scratch and pick Matthew Stafford or Josh Allen, Stafford's probably going to win the MVP this year. Josh Allen's definitely inserted himself into number 2, especially after yesterday. But Josh Allen is the best player in the league. Yeah, Matt Stafford's probably going to win MVP. And this is why I take certain awards with a grain of salt. Like, Coach of the Year, Andy Reid should and Bill Belichick should have been Coach of the Year almost every year of their career. But what do they have? Maybe 4 of them combined or something? How many Coach of the Years did Bill Belichick win? I don't even know. Maybe like a 2? One or 2 of them? I don't know. Like MVP, like Matt Stafford's going to win MVP, but Josh Allen's the best quarterback in the league right now. And watching that game yesterday, when they were down, they ended up coming out of the half, and I knew at that point, when I seen Buffalo come out, I think it was Ray Davis returned it 58 yards, and it was like, hell, I knew from that moment that Buffalo came out with a fire, and Josh Allen went like 3 plays and scored a touchdown. I was like, this thing's over. Buffalo is going to win this game. I turned over to the people sitting with me in the room. I was like, Buffalo's going to win this game. I said it. When I see Josh Allen come out, New England, I think they went 3 and out on the next drive, I was like, yeah, it's over. Buffalo was just touchdown after touchdown after touchdown. And I think playing Josh Allen in the snow, playing him in inclement weather is a disaster. And I even thought New England at home, I was like, I don't think they're going to get this win. But when I looked up and they were up 24-7, I was like, damn, they might actually end up winning this game. It was a pretty telling game. People were talking about New England with the cupcake schedule. They can't beat teams this. They can't beat teams that. And I thought it was a chance to kind of silence the critics yesterday, and they kind of blew it. Now, in New England's defense, they're without Will Campbell, and they're without Milton Williams, their biggest run stuffer and their best defensive lineman. And they're going to be back. I mean, I think they're going to be back next week. I think Milton Williams comes back next week, and Will Campbell will be back the week after. So they have a big game against Baltimore next week. That's going to be a very telling game for them. If they win that game, they have the Jets in Miami. And if they can win either one of those, they're going to win. They're going to win the division regardless. So they just have to win 2 out of these next 3, which, as I mentioned, 2's against Miami and New York. They should be able to wrap this thing up, and realistically over Baltimore as well. I do like I feel like the Patriots could come out underdogs in that game. I have to look at the betting line this week, which I think is kind of crazy, but that'll be an interesting game. They moved that to prime time, but Patriots defense just kind of crumbled. And like I mentioned with the flags and everything, nonetheless, Josh Allen came out and was just leading drives, third downs, big third downs, completing passes down the field. Look multiple times, Kincaid's wide open 20 yards down the field. So, you got to give him credit to where it's due. You can talk about flags. You can talk about flags in every game. Every single game, you're like, how the hell did they not call that? How the hell did they not call this or that? But you got to give Josh Allen and the Bills their flowers, man. That was just, when you're up 24-7, you have to just control time of possession, keep the ball out of Josh Allen's hands. And the last couple of drives of the game, they barely ran the ball. And it ended up just keep giving the ball to Josh Allen. That's what they did, and they couldn't end up going on drives. Drake May, that offense just stalled. So, tough game there for the Pats, but I still think they're in good shape. As I mentioned, they get Campbell back, they get Milton Williams back, and I think people kind of forget that, but the media is really down on New England this week, but I think they'll be fine heading forward. Ravens-Bengals, 24-0. Not really too much to talk about this game here. The Ravens, it was a really slow first half. I mean, I think it was like maybe 7-0 or 0-0 going into the half. But I kind of want to talk about this game for Joe Burrow's sake and the Bengals. If I want to talk about here for the Ravens, I think it was a good win for them to come out, and it was a much-needed win because honestly, kind of coming into this game, I was like, this is the season on the line for Baltimore because I think Pittsburgh's going to win against Miami tonight, and I think, especially if Pittsburgh were to win that game and Baltimore were to lose yesterday, it'd be over. I mean, Baltimore has to play New England next week, which is going to be a very tough assignment anyway. And I think they round out the season. They got to play Pittsburgh again and Green Bay. So it would have been over at that point. But they come out with a big win and back to 7-7, and they are going to be scoreboard watching the Steelers tonight. So that's going to be big there. But the defense coming along, where how bad that defense has been terrible for a majority of the year. Zach Orr, kind of surprised he wasn't fired at the beginning of the year or halfway throughout the season. Their defense, I looked at a graphic yesterday, and at the beginning of the season for Baltimore, I think it was like the first half of the season, you know what their red zone conversion percentage was on defense? 100%. It was, when teams got in the red zone, they converted in the red zone 100% of the time. Like, how he wasn't fired, I have no clue. I really don't, but seems like he's kind of turned it around like he did last year, but still, they've got a couple of tough games coming up here. New England's offense has been really good. Green Bay's offense is still really good, and then Pittsburgh, who they struggle with on both sides of the ball anyway. Both teams do. But Baltimore, big win. But kind of wanted to talk about the Bengals and Joe Burrow. Was there anything I wanted to talk about? Like, Joe Burrow, fans were kind of heckling him yesterday, and Jamar Chase screaming on the sideline, like, if y'all don't leave it, if y'all don't like it, go to hell home, or whatever it was. And then after the game, he was really hard on himself. And he had that really kind of concerning press conference the other day to where I was like, if I forget exactly what he said, but he was basically saying, like, if I'm not happy with what I'm doing, and like, what's the point of doing it? And after the game, it was like, no team in this league, if they had me as their quarterback this week, would have won the game. I mean, he has been seriously like depressed. And even Jamar Chase said that he's never once had to like go pick up Joe Burrow, be like, hey, dude, like, it's good. Joe Burrow's the one always picking up the team. And it's like, these last couple of weeks, Joe Burrow seems like he has zero interest in football. And it showed a lot of comparisons to Andrew Luck a few years ago when he retired. He was like kind of getting banged up, lots of injuries at the beginning of his career. But when he plays, he is a top 5 quarterback in the league at his best. And kind of start wondering, like, is Joe Burrow kind of headed in that Andrew Luck direction a little bit? It is a little bit concerning. I mean, yesterday, the crowd was booing. They were out of it. They were heckling Joe Burrow in that offense. And, it's rough. It really is. I mean, I actually thought the Bengals defense didn't play too bad yesterday. I mean, 24 points, in an offensive league is not bad, especially against Lamar Jackson and those guys. So I kind of thought they did their part. But obviously, when you score 0 points, you're never going to win a game. The best you're ever going to do is tie a game. And Cincinnati's defense ain't never holding a team to 0 points. So, so it kind of was on the offense yesterday. But you kind of wonder, is he just done? I wonder what this is going to lead to in the offseason. Is he going to manage to kind of get his spirits back? Obviously, Cincinnati's eliminated from the playoffs. They've been eliminated from the playoffs since Joe Burrow went out in week 3. How come Cincinnati ain't going to make the playoffs again? Cincinnati's record without Joe Burrow is atrocious. It's terrible. But when Joe Burrow plays a full healthy season, the team's actually really good. And I think this is now 3 straight years Cincinnati hasn't made the playoffs. Joe Burrow's taken some hits. He's been injured a few times, like big-time injuries where he's had to get surgery. That takes a toll on a player. It does. And you kind of just have to wonder, what is this going to lead to? Is he going to want to get traded? And mind you, if he wants to get traded, whether or not Cincinnati will pull the trigger and do so, that's going to have a domino effect. Jamar Chase ain't going to want to be there anymore, depending on who they get back. One team I could maybe see kind of suiting in that trade, is Detroit. Because you wonder if Detroit would be like, hey, Cincinnati, trading Joe Burrow for Jared Goff. Joe Burrow is the better quarterback, but you're getting a guy who Jamar Chase would not complain about playing with. Yeah, he may not be as good as Joe Burrow, but, you're not sticking in, what the hell is his name? Jake Browning. You're not sticking him in to be your starter. You're getting a guy who's a very accomplished starter and can win a lot of games. So maybe that's something that can be talked about going forward, but I'm really curious to see where this goes leading into next year, because I think this is very concerning for Cincinnati. Maybe, I kind of wasn't falling into the trap to where maybe Joe Burrow does retire next season, but I'm kind of starting to wonder, maybe it's not next season, but maybe in 2 seasons, will Joe Burrow retire from the game of football? I don't know. And it's kind of concerning. It's starting to now, after watching yesterday, it is very, very weird. I don't know. Chargers, Chiefs, 16-13 yesterday. Chiefs are eliminated. The Kansas City Chiefs are eliminated from the playoffs for the first time in 10 years. I was 12 or 13 years old the last time they did make the playoffs. Kind of crazy. And seeing that, I think they would have lost that game if Mahomes stayed in yesterday. That team is just clearly off their game. Now they're calling for Matt Nagy's job. It's just kind of getting ugly in Kansas City right now. And now with Pat Mahomes tearing his ACL, people are questioning, is he going to be back by the beginning of next year? We have no idea. I actually seen a doctor kind of making some reports about it yesterday. Is one thing that's really kind of all over the place with ACL injuries is it's not just, hey, we're going to roll him in tomorrow for surgery. It depends. Everyone's different. Yeah, you can roll in a guy a week later in the surgery, or it can be a month or so before they have to get surgery on their ACL, because they have to wait for the swelling to go down. So, again, I don't necessarily know how bad his, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know how bad his is compared to some others. Maybe they'll roll him in next week for surgery, which would be definitely be something to be optimistic about. When you're talking about the game of football and the regular season, to where him coming back a month later or a month earlier, that's a massive difference. That's 4 or 5 games we're talking about. And that in a football season is incredibly important. So when you're playing, you have 17 games, 4 or 5 games is the difference in your season. Now, 1 game, if Pat Mahomes were to miss 1 game, that could be the difference. So definitely some things to look out there for, but the Chiefs missing the playoffs. I made a comparison earlier this year, which I was completely wrong about. To where I thought they would be the 2014 Patriots, to where that team ended up winning the Super Bowl against the Legion of Boom and the Seattle Seahawks, and the Patriots obviously ended up doing so. But at the beginning of the season, they looked like ass. They were 1-2. Brady, they were maybe benching Brady for Garoppolo. They actually ended up getting blown out to the Chiefs. And I kind of made that comparison this year to they have a slow start, but they got Rashee Rice back. They blew out the Raiders. They were kind of blowing out some teams, and they were looking really good again. And then even with Mahomes, they just kind of fell back down a cliff, and it was this is a serious cause for concern with this Kansas City Chiefs team. And they actually never really ended up getting it back. I think if Mahomes stayed in that game yesterday, if Gardner Minshew didn't step in, they were still losing that game. I mean, Mahomes threw a pick in the red zone. That team was just off its game. And they have some changes to make in the offseason. They just do. They know Mahomes probably isn't going to start their season. Again, I'm not a doctor, so I don't necessarily know the timeline per se, but most ACL injuries, especially since he has it now, throughout 15 weeks of the season. It's not like he got it back in week 3 or something like that earlier this year. It'd be like, yeah, I'm pretty confident he'd be back in the beginning of next year. Those injuries kind of take a while. It's like, do you really want to rush him back from an ACL injury? Because if you end up rushing him back and he ends up doing something to it again, which has happened before, it's happened in basketball, it's happened in football, it's happened everywhere, in almost every sport. We could maybe be seeing the end of his career to that point. So you definitely don't want to rush him back. But, I don't think he's going to be back by the beginning of next year. That's just me personally. But, they're going to have to figure out a solution of some sort. They're going to have to really hit this draft. Obviously, Kelsey and those guys are going to retire. There is no chance Kelsey stays. I think they're going to have to figure out what to do with Chris Jones. He's not the same player he's been, and I think there's some calls for concern there. I think if you can get some sort of value for him, I definitely think you should look into the trade market for Chris Jones. I think any team would trade for him. I don't think he's worth a first-round pick anymore, but I think get a third-round pick or so back, and your team has to get younger, so I would definitely look into doing that, if he didn't want to retire or anything. But Chiefs in a weird position, a position they have not been in the Patrick Mahomes dynasty. So I was wrong about the Chiefs. I thought they were going to maybe bounce this thing back, but definitely didn't. And in terms of the Chargers, look, in terms of this game, everyone's talking about, well, Chiefs this, Chiefs that, and the Chargers, they keep rolling with an injured team. Their offensive line ain't worth a damn. It ain't. I think they ended up getting Mekhi Becton back yesterday, but you're still missing your top 2 tackles. When you're missing Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt, and mind you, you're not missing guys that are bottom of the barrel tackles, to where if you're missing them, it's like, oh, well, maybe we can experiment with some guys on the bench, but you're missing 2 of some of the best tackles in football, and they're still winning games. You have to give Jim Harbaugh a lot of credit, and especially, this Michigan thing with Sharon Moore has been looming over his head this week. And I don't care who you are, you're a human being. That can throw you off your game. And I know he's looking forward to playing the Chiefs, knocking them out and shit like that. But when you're in a situation like that with Sharon Moore, and people are wondering, is he tied to this? Does he know anything? Lining a guy up like that for the Michigan head coach, clearly he knew he wasn't a good guy or whatever. That has to be looming over his head a little bit. Not saying Jim Harbaugh's guilty of anything, but I'm saying whether if that was me in that position or not, look, I wouldn't put myself in that position, but it would loom over my head. I'd be like, dude, I know I'm not tied to this, but if people are thinking so, that's kind of scary. I don't want people thinking I'm linked up with this guy, or whatever it is, and lining up to be the head coach here, and I know he's up to some shady shit. So, a lot of credit there to Justin Herbert, who's coming off a surgery a few weeks ago and missing his top 2 tackles. Chargers just keep rolling. Now, I do think there's limitations with the Chargers, and there will be in January. I do think this team will make the playoffs, but especially with the Chiefs out of the mix. But that had to feel good knocking out the Chiefs if you're the Chargers, ending kind of that. I'm not going to necessarily say the end of the dynasty for Kansas City, but this run they've had over the last 10 years or so, they ended it. They ended a lot of their streaks in terms of consecutive playoff seasons, division titles, stuff like that. So, you gotta give the Chargers a lot of credit there. Colts, Seahawks, 16-18. Look, Seahawks end up pulling off an ugly win. Jason Myers, the first Seattle kicker ever, figure I'd give him his flowers, to make 6 field goals in a game yesterday against the Colts. He was the reason why they won the game. You have to be a hell of a kicker to do that. Kickers go around like it's no tomorrow in this league. Hell, I seen Blake Grupe was kicking for the Colts yesterday. He was just kicking for the Saints 2 weeks ago. So, kickers just passed around the league like it's nothing. And for him to be able to be consistent and be a good kicker, I always say the most underrated position in football is having a really good kicker, because they're really hard to find. And to be able to have one like that and just not be like, oh, God, we have to roll this guy out. please, for the love of God, let this guy make a kick. To be able to be confident that your kicker can make like a 55 plus in clutch moments, or no matter where it's from, whether it's 40, 50, 55, 60, to be able to have some sort of confidence in your kicker in clutch moments and be like, okay, he's got this. I feel confident he's going to make this kick and win us this game. It's pretty special. Because when you have to roll out, like, no offense to Joey Sly or anything, but he's been around like 100 million different teams. Zane Gonzalez, like, there's a lot of kickers. Michael Badgley, who was kicking for the Colts and ended up not making the cut a couple weeks ago, ended up getting cut from the team a little bit ago. Those guys are all over the board. They look good for teams for a little bit, but they're patchwork guys. And Jason Myers, knowing that the kicking position in the NFL, you have very little room for error. In a big spot where you see the Rams win, the 49ers win, the Bears win, Philly win. Your team has to win this week in order to stay in the race, not only for the number one seed, but for your division. Shout out Jason Myers for that, man. Maybe not a lot of podcasters are giving you your credit, but I sure as hell am, because that's a tough spot to be at. But the Colts, I thought they played a really good defensive game yesterday. Again, held the Seahawks to no touchdowns, only field goals. And being able to go out there and keep it close with one of the better teams in the league, with Sam Darnold and JSN and a really good defense, and you're rolling out Grandpa Phillip Rivers, who hasn't played a game in like 1,800 days or something like that. I mean, it's been a really long time since Phillip Rivers has played football. Maybe, I don't think it was 1,800 days, but it's been like 5 years since he's played a game. I think it was January of 2021. It's been a long time since Phillip Rivers has played football. So it would be 1,800 days. I am good at math. 4 years is about 50. Whatever. You get my point. But Phillip Rivers in the Colts, that being able to keep it close against the Seahawks is incredibly impressive. I actually thought Phillip Rivers played a good game. He had the interception with like 11 seconds left in the fourth quarter, but look, he was just throwing it to try and make something happen. You can't necessarily blame him for that. But before that, they had a touchdown pass, which when I seen him throw that touchdown, I was like, holy shit, man. It's really fun seeing him go out there and be able to throw a touchdown and keep the Colts competitive. I thought they were going to win the game. I mean, the Colts kind of choked a little bit, to be honest with you. They were up with like 40 seconds left in that game. They just had to hold. The Seahawks were not being able to get in field goal range, and they kind of choked it away there. But I thought their offense looked sustainable. They handed it off a lot to Jonathan Taylor yesterday. And obviously that was kind of their game plan from the jump. But for Phillip Rivers to be able to go out there and do what he did was really fun to watch and really impressive. Now, I don't necessarily know what this team does going forward with Phillip Rivers. I don't know if he's going to play next week. Mind you, they still do have Anthony Richardson, who they invested in with the fourth overall pick like two or 3 years ago. So, and he's been on IR. I don't necessarily know when he comes off or if he's going to be available this week. I'm going to have to check in the reports this upcoming week. So they do still have him, and I think they probably start him over Phillip Rivers when he's healthy. Again, they have a lot invested in him. Maybe he comes out, if he can show any sort of signs of life, it's like, do we start this guy next year? Daniel Jones, I don't know necessarily how long his injury is going to be, whether or not he'll be able to start next year. But in terms of a guy who can bring athleticism, has one of the best arms in the league. Hopefully he learned from Daniel Jones. Maybe Phillip Rivers is mentoring him a little bit. I think they are probably going to end up starting Anthony Richardson, or even Riley Leonard if he is healthy. But I actually thought Rivers played surprisingly well yesterday. So credit to them and the Colts, man. Last game I want to talk about here today, Jets-Jags. Or actually, no. Sorry, skipped over again. Lions, Rams, 34-41. A game with a lot of implications on the line, as I mentioned earlier, with the referee calls. That Parkinson touchdown was kind of brutal yesterday. I think the Rams still score on that regardless, but you never know. But one of the things with the Rams is there's very few teams that I feel in this league that are legitimately a handful, like really hard to deal with. And the Los Angeles Rams are a team I feel like is just one of those teams that are a serious handful. Like, you look on their schedule, that is a team you do not want to play at all. Now, some of the concerns I do have for the Rams is like their secondary kind of blows, to be honest with you. Emmanuel Forbes is like their number one corner, who has been a good story. He's definitely playing better than he did on Washington, but he's not a number one corner. Like Amon-Ra St. Brown yesterday had 9 catches for like 126 yards, I think, or something like that in the first half of the game. And they've kind of, honestly, their secondary has been kind of getting torched all season, to be honest with you. They've had good moments, but they've definitely had some down moments. And especially when you're playing against good receiving crews, like, yeah, Philly, they blew out the Raiders 31-0 yesterday, and their offense has kind of been in a bit of a slog, has been a bit of a slugfest. They have elite talent on their offense. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. Reminds you, the Rams did lose 2 earlier in the year. That's going to be hard to stop. And one thing with LA, too, is they're playing in a controlled environment. They're playing in 70-some degree weather. Those guys are sweating. You know, you look at Cincinnati, Baltimore, New England, Buffalo, like, yeah, I know they're not playing against those teams in the playoffs necessarily, but if they have to go against Philly, if they have to go against Chicago and Chicago's home field advantage, that's going to be tough. And mind you, one thing with Stafford is he's played in a dome his whole career. He played in Detroit. He's played in LA now with SoFi and beautiful weather in LA. That is one thing to be kind of a cause for concern. Their pass rush, kind of iffy as well, but still feel like that team's a handful. Nakua, Devontae Adams, kind of have to keep an eye on that injury there a little bit. But Stafford is the MVP of the league right now. Is he the best quarterback in the league? Josh Allen, to me, is still the best QB in the league, but he is very valuable to that team. What he's done with Adams, Puka Nacua, he can make any receiver. Not saying that Adams and Nacua are irrelevant receivers, but he can make any receiver that is a 7th-round pick make it look like a 1st-round pick. No matter who he has out there, he makes it work, and he has elite talent on offense. I think their guards, they have one of the better guard tandems in the league. Just impressive, you know. And the Lions, with the Packers loss yesterday, I know they're excited about that, but I think Chicago is going to win that division, which is insane to say. That the Chicago Bears are going to probably win the NFC North. I did not think I'd be saying that this year. I figured they'd probably be better, maybe end up maybe snagging a 7 seed, going 9-8 or 10-7. But what they're doing, what Ben Johnson has done there in Chicago is just nothing short of incredible. But Detroit, they're still in this thing. It's just their defense is just not good enough to be able to win games. Their offense, look, they're going to be in shootouts with every game this year and the rest of their games this year. They are. Their secondary is not good enough. They have too many injuries. And I don't know. Their coordinators are very iffy to me. One game they look good. The next game, they're just like, what the hell is that? So, just have to kind of keep an eye out there. But the Rams just feel like a serious handful in this league. And Detroit, meanwhile, they have immense offensive talent. Penei Sewell's fantastic. Amon-Ra's fantastic. Jameson Williams, really looking like a 1st-round pick. Their defense is not good enough to be able to win the Super Bowl. They're just not. Like, shootout games, I trust about any other team's defense in the league other than Detroit's to this point. They're brutal. And, the Rams trying to stay competitive as well in terms of competing for that number 1 seed. Now the last game I want to talk about today, Jags, Jets. Nothing to really speak about the Jets. I seen they fired Steve Wilkes this morning. They're terrible. They're going to be drafting a quarterback this year. Thought it was kind of cool seeing Brady Cook, though. His parents in the stands watching him throw his first touchdown. They zoomed in on them all excited. I thought that was pretty cool. Credit to him. But, seeing they fired Steve Wilkes after Trevor Lawrence just absolutely ate them alive. And to my point with the Jags is I think the Jags, I made comparisons all year. As I mentioned earlier in the video, the Chiefs, comparing them to the 2014 Patriots. I'm kind of comparing the Jags to their 2017 selves, the 2017 Jags. This is a team the media is not talking about it at all. And, maybe they're kind of sprinkling them in a little bit, but they're talking about Josh Allen in Buffalo, New England more than Jacksonville, Denver. Like, media's really high on Denver, and respectfully so. And, just about any other team that's really good. Jacksonville gets no press. And mind you, they're a smaller market, I get that, but I think teams, and the Patriots are kind of in the spot as well, that have nothing to lose. Like, all they can do at this point is overachieve. Like, no one thought Jacksonville was going to be this good right now, especially earlier in the year. Like, yeah, Jacksonville looked like, they should improve from what they were like last year and the last few years. But I say the scariest teams in the league are teams that can only overachieve, aka the Washington Commanders last year. And, the Jags, what they're doing, like, Trevor Lawrence is their biggest question mark right now. And how he's played the last few weeks, how he played yesterday against the Jets. Again, the Jets stink, but against the Colts, like, he played a really good game against the Colts. And for a while this year, I was kind of bashing Trevor Lawrence, and a lot of the media was as well. As like, we can't take the Jags serious because Trevor Lawrence isn't playing good enough. Well, Trevor Lawrence is now playing good enough, and Jacoby Myers has been a major difference maker for that team. And Trevor Lawrence is now playing good enough. He had like 5 touchdowns yesterday, picking the Jets apart. I don't care. They're a professional football team. Picking them apart. And Trevor Lawrence, no matter who he plays against, is prone to turnovers. If he can cut out the turnovers, I look at every unit of this Jacksonville team. Their receiving core, Brian Thomas Jr., kind of a spark lit up there in him. Jacoby Myers has so far kind of been, to me, the best trade at the trade deadline. He's made a serious difference for the Jacksonville Jaguars so far. They have good pass rushers, good linebackers, good corners, good safeties, good offensive line, good running backs. Trevor Lawrence, if he can play where he's not throwing turnovers, good quarterback. They have good players at every level of the ball. And they're very impressive. So, Jacksonville, I think that this is a team we could look up, and they could very well be in the AFC Championship. So that's a team to keep an eye on. I think they're seriously good if Trevor Lawrence can be consistent. So, team to keep an eye on there. And that is it for today's video. Hope you all enjoyed it. I'll see you guys tomorrow on Top 10 Tuesday. Got some other things to talk about there as well. So, per usual, everybody, take it easy.